100 episodes. Didn't see that coming when I joined the Red Leaf Retrocast Retro Anime podcast back in 2017. But here we are. It's been 4 years. We have watched so much great anime, and probably even more average and shit. But it's been a fun ride. So to celebrate 100 episodes, I figured I would remake a video I made a long time ago. That's right, today I'm updating the top 5 anime by Red Leaf Retrocast video. But this time, because I have a lot more to pick from, I'm making it a top 10, because everyone loves top 10 videos, especially people love to complain about them. But I hope you'll enjoy this nonetheless. I'm also planning on making another video later, where we'll take a look at some of the worst shows we've reviewed on the podcast as well. But for now, strap yourselves in, and enjoy these 10 picks of the best shows we've ever reviewed on the podcast. First up, we have a timeless classic from 1978. And that is the 26-episode adventure show by Nippon Animation, called Future Boy Conan. This anime was inspired by Alexander Keyes' 1970 novel called The Incredible Tide, and was directed by Hayao Miyazaki of Ghibli fame. It tells the story of a boy named Conan, who was raised on an island called Remnant Island, which was a place where refugees had settled after they fled from a terrifying wave of magnetic bombs that had wiped out most of humanity. Conan and his grandfather are now the only remnants living on this island, and are just trying to survive, thinking that they are the only people still alive. However, one day, a young girl washes ashore, and Conan learns that there are more people alive around the world, who have formed nations of their own. Industria is one of those nations, and they want Lana as a hostage, to force her father to power their machinery. Soldiers from Industria soon arrive on the island and capture Lana, and Conan decides to venture out into this post-apocalyptic world in an attempt to save her. This show is amazing. For a show from the 70s, it actually looks really good. The attention to detail, the animation, the story. Everything about it just screams classic. We reviewed this anime all the way back in episode 29, and it was definitely one of the best shows we had reviewed on the podcast at that time. I'm probably the one who liked it the least out of all 3 hosts, but even I thought it was a good adventure show. Definitely a must-watch for all retro anime enthusiasts. Coming in at number 9, we have a movie from the year 2000, and that is Jin-Roh, The Wolf Brigade. This amazing movie was produced by Studio Production IG, written by Mamoru Oshii, and directed by Hiroyuki Okiura. This movie is actually the third of a trilogy of movies by Mamoru Oshii that was released from 1987 to 2000, based on the Kerberos saga, which is an alternate historical and political thriller. Jin-Roh is set in a post-World War II Japan and tells the story of Kazuki Fuse, a soldier in an elite counterterrorism unit called Kerberos Panzerkorps. In this version of Japan, the country is running rampant with terrorists, and it is the Kerberos unit's job to get rid of them. However, Fuse once witnesses a young girl blow herself up and is haunted by her image. On top of that, he is also blamed for his failure to capture the girl and is sent to retraining. This is where his life is turned upside down as he gets tangled up in government conspiracy. So, long story short, this is a very weird take on Little Red Riding Hood. But you know what? It kinda works. It's a very entertaining film on its own, but if you want the full context for what is going on, you should also seek out the live-action movies by Oshii. We reviewed this movie back in episode 63, so if you want to hear more about this, and the 2 live-action movies as well, then definitely go and check it out. Coming in at number 8 on this list, we have yet another Mamoru Oshii movie. This time, it's the 1995 cyberpunk thriller, Ghost in the Shell. Based on the manga by Masamune Shirow, this movie is set in the futuristic Nihama City. We follow Major Makoto Kusanagi and the rest of her team at Public Security Section 9 as they are investigating a case involving the mysterious hacker known as the Puppet Master. Being that technology and cybernetics has advanced a lot, most people have started to replace their human body parts with robotic parts. The Major herself has a fully cybernetic body, and due to her special circumstances, the Puppet Master takes an interest in her. But as this case opens up, more government agencies like Section 6 starts getting involved, and multiple philosophical questions are raised, such as the meaning of life and what it means to be human. This movie is absolutely amazing. You just have to look at the movies it has inspired, such as The Matrix for example. There isn't really much to be said about it that hasn't already been said. It's been analyzed to death because there's just that much to actually look into here. But if you want to hear our little analysis of this movie, then you can check that out on episode 75 of the RLR Anime Cast. Next up, we've got a special one from one of my favorite series, and that is the 2002 movie Lupin III Episode 0, First Contact. This is an alternate take on how Lupin and the gang first met, told to us as an interview with Jigen. Jigen was at the time part of the Mafia, and was tasked with protecting an ancient artifact, but both Lupin and Fujiko Mine were out to steal it. Meanwhile, Senigata, who was then working for the Japanese police, has traveled all the way to the US in order to catch Fujiko, and Goemon is out searching for the lost treasure of his clan. If you've watched this channel before, you know that I really like Lupin. Like, a lot. There's a lot of Lupin stuff that I would have liked to see on this list, but I'm glad that we at least all agreed to get one. Lupin is very formulaic, but it's a formula that has worked for them since the 70s, and it still seems to charm people, like me, even today. We reviewed this show and a few other Lupin specials back in episode 54. Coming in at number 6, we have the final movie on this list, and that is the 1988 movie directed by Katsuhiro Otomo called Akira. The story starts when an explosion caused by a psychic ends up destroying Tokyo and World War III breaks out, back in 1988. The psychic is captured and stored away to never cause any more destruction. Fast forward to 2019, and Tokyo has been restored as Neo-Tokyo, and is rife with corruption, terrorism, and gangs. We follow Shotaro Kaneda, Tetsuo Shima, and the rest of their biker gang. One day while fighting their rivals, the Clowns, Tetsuo is caught up in an accident involving an escaped psychic. Because of this accident, Tetsuo starts to develop psychic powers, and is then seized by the government to be quarantined, to prevent another disaster like the one back in 1988. But Tetsuo's friend Kaneda joins a resistance cell in an attempt to save Tetsuo and the other captured espers. You know we couldn't make a top list and not include this movie here somewhere. It is by all metrics a true classic. A very enjoyable watch, and also still holds up in terms of visuals. Regardless of what you think about the story or the violence on display, you can't argue with the impact that this movie has had. We reviewed this anime back in episode 48. The number 5 spot on this list goes to Shinichiro Watanabe's 1998 show, Cowboy Bebop. The story follows the bounty hunters Spike Spiegel and Jet Black as they travel around the galaxy, chasing bounties and getting into trouble. Along the way, they end up picking up Ain, a genetically engineered and highly intelligent corgi, the femme fatale Faye Valentine, as well as the proficient hacker known as Radical Ed. I'm pretty sure everyone at least knows about this show at this point. It's an episodic adventure show that seems to either strike a very deep chord with people or fall completely flat for them. For me, it will always be the show that got me into anime, and I enjoy it a lot. Definitely a worthy number 5 in my eyes. We reviewed this show back in episode 50. Coming in at number 4, we have the 1999 OVA, Trust and Betrayal, Samurai X, Rurouni Kenshin, whatever name you know it by. This historical drama is a prequel to the Rurouni Kenshin series, and quite the spectacular OVA. It tells the origin story of the assassin who would go on to bear the name Hitokiri Batosai, showcasing his past and his remarkable skill with the sword, and the struggles that he will face in life. Trust and Betrayal is easily one of my favorite teen shows of all time. The story on display is simple yet effective, and the animation and visuals are absolutely amazing. It showcases everything I love about OVAs, without overstaying its welcome. Hell, I wouldn't even have minded if there were 4 more episodes. Of course, there's an entire 94 episode series that follows, plus a bunch of other content, so it's not over after the first OVA. But still, Trust and Betrayal is special, and I love it a lot. We all do, and that's why it's at number 4. We reviewed this show back in episode 44. Now we're entering the top 3, and starting us off at number 3 is an absolutely legendary OVA series from 1988. That is, of course, the 110 episode space opera, Legend of the Galactic Heroes. The story centers around the 150-year-long stalemate between the Galactic Empire and the Free Planets Alliance. This political and ideological war is appearing to be nearing an end, as two prospects of their respective nations are making their way up in the military. On the Empire side, we have the idealistic military genius Reinhard von Lohengram, while on the Alliance side, we have Yang Wen Li, a somewhat lazy historian and amazing tactician and strategist. They both seem to be capable of swinging the war in their favor, but who will be victorious in the end? This is one of those shows that people praise to high heaven for its amazing story. And you know what? It deserves it. It's rare to find stories that just grab you and never seem to let you go, taking you on all sorts of adventures and hitting you with twists and developments that just makes you want to keep going. But Legend of the Galactic Heroes is definitely one of those shows. While not typically a show I would be super interested in, it's hard not to get hooked on this one. There's just so much going on here, and it's so worth the watch, even at 110 episodes. We reviewed this show over the course of multiple podcast episodes, namely episode 39, 61, 77, and 81. Coming in at second place is the previous top 5 video's number 1 pick, and that is the 1979 World Masterpiece Theater anime, Akage no Ann, aka Anne of Green Gables. This 50-episode series, produced by Nippon Animation and directed by Isao Takahata of Ghibli fame, is an amazing coming-of-age story. Based on the 1908 novel by Lucy Maud Montgomery, this show tells us the story of an 11-year-old orphan named Anne. She mistakenly gets adopted by the Cuthbert family, who actually wanted a boy to help out at the farm, and it shows her life from age 11 to 17. And what it's like growing up at Green Gables, starting school, finding her own dreams, as well as the sacrifices she has to make. I can't praise this show highly enough. Not only is it absolutely beautiful, with amazing watercolor painted backgrounds, but it might also be one of, if not the best, coming-of-age story I've ever seen. The attention to detail is so good as you see Anne slowly change and get bigger, lose her freckles, and gain some weight over the course of the series. It's also an amazing example of how to show the passing of time over the course of a series, as in the beginning, everything is quite slow, since there is so much new stuff that happens, but as time goes on, and she starts to settle into a rhythm and way of life, time starts passing a lot faster. Honestly, I can just sit here and gush about this show for hours on end. If you still haven't seen this show, and you're a fan of coming-of-age stories, then you need to get on this as soon as possible. We reviewed this show back in the early days, in episode 21. And now we have come to the end of this list. But before I keep going, I would like to just quickly show you some of the shows that didn't quite make this list. They are all amazing shows in their own respect as well, but for one reason or another, they didn't quite beat out any of the shows here. Ashita no Joe, Vision of Escaflowne, Night on the Galactic Railroad, Takarajima, City Hunter 1987, Touch, Bebop High School, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Princess Mononoke, Mobile Police Patlabor, movies 1 and 2. So those were the honorable mentions. And now, on to the number 1 pick. So the number 1 pick of all the anime we have reviewed over the 4 years of doing the Red Leaf Retrocast is Gankutsuou, the Count of Monte Cristo. This 2004 TV series from Gonzo is based on Alexandre Dumas' Count of Monte Cristo, though it was originally supposed to be an adaptation of Alfred Bester's The Star's My Destination. Gankutsuou is essentially a different take on the Count of Monte Cristo with a sci-fi setting. I'm about to butcher French names here, but Viscount Albert de Morcerf and his friend Baron d'Epinay travel to the moon city of Luna to attend carnival. While there, Albert ends up running into a mysterious man known as the Count of Monte Cristo, a mysterious yet charming self-made noble. and maybe just the person Albert needs to create more excitement in his life. But through many twists and turns, we learn that this mysterious nobleman has some sinister plans. He plans to get revenge on all of those who have wronged him in the past. Gankutsuou is just straight up amazing. I've heard talk about this show for years, but I figured it was just being overhyped and that I wouldn't like it as much. But man was I wrong. We watched this on episode 93, and it is the only show we've reviewed on the podcast that I have given a full score. Not because it's literally perfect, but because it resonated with me so much that I couldn't come up with a reason to deduct points without being extremely nitpicky. It's stylish as all hell, tells a great story, has great characters, and has so many twists and turns along the way. I was utterly hooked from start to finish. Funny enough, when making this list and putting all the host scores together, this was the only anime that didn't tie with any other anime. That just goes to show how well received this show was among all of us. It's truly worth a watch, and definitely deserving of taking the #1 spot on this list. And that's a wrap. These are the top 10 shows that we've reviewed on the RLR Retro Anime Podcast. Honestly, I think this is a really good and varied list. Totally not biased or anything. We have 2 70s anime, 2 80s anime, 3 90s anime, and 3 2000s anime. That's a pretty good mix of decades. I'm glad it wasn't just all 80s and 90s anime on the list. There's also many different genres represented, like sci-fi, adventure, and even slice of life. All in all, I'm pretty happy with this list. And who knows, maybe if we do another 100 episodes, I'll update this list once again. But before that, we'll be taking a look at some of the worst shows we've watched in a different video later. Alright, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to tell me how badly this list sucked in the comments, as well as telling me how badly I butchered those French names. Subscribe if you want to see more from me, and peace.